You're listening to the Digital Barbell Podcast. Our mission is to provide you with a clear path to health and fitness through education, coaching, and accountability. We are your hosts, Jonathan and Blakely Fletcher, and we are here to serve you. If you like what we're doing, please subscribe to this podcast and leave us a 5-star review so that we can reach more people. You can find us daily on Instagram and Facebook at Digital Barbell. Now, let's get to today's topic. All right, guys, welcome to episode number 86 of the Digital Barbell Podcast. Thank you for being here. Hope everybody is having a great day. Thank you for your ratings and reviews. We appreciate all of you guys. You're awesome. Let's get to today's sponsor. We've been in a sponsor drought, but we have a good one today.
I just love the sponsors. Mm-hmm.
We're sponsored by Turkey Chili. Turkey Chili has been...
That's not even a thing.
...coming out of the woodworks. They're on board. They've sent us a blank check. So we've been crushing some turkey chili in the cold months for a couple years now, maybe 3 years, but it's made a resurgence now that it's cooling off a little bit. We are neck deep in turkey chili for dinner. And I've had some people asking like, hey, what do y'all do with your chili? Because I sometimes will put pictures of it in the Instagram story. So I'm going to put the recipe that we're using currently for our turkey chili in the show notes for this episode.
You need to give credit where credit's due on this turkey chili, because an old coworker of Jonathan's when he used to remodel homes gave us this recipe back when we lived in Idaho.
True story.
So it's not really our turkey chili.
Yep. Credit where credit's due. Thanks, Rick. I don't think you're listening to this, but we've tweaked it over the years, and I'm sure we'll continue to tweak it. But if you're interested in making some delicious, low-calorie, high-protein chili, then look forward to the notes to this episode.
Delicious, easy to make, and leftovers.
That's right.
All bonuses.
Let's get on to this week's wins of the week.
Ooh, 2 wins.
We got 2 wins because 2 came in that were just too good not to share. And I figured if we forgot, we might forget to do one next week. So let's go ahead and do both. This one's really awesome. This is from our client, Holly. She came to us for nutrition coaching. She's a CrossFitter. She's already been crushing fat loss. I think she's down over 50 pounds before she even came to work with Digital Barbell. She just wanted to make sure that she had a sustainable approach to her nutrition because she was feeling a little bit shaky. Maybe some of the habits weren't where she wanted. And here's what she said. She said, I really love that I feel like I've learned more about sustainable long-term nutrition in 20 days than I did in 6 months. I love that I'm focusing on nutrition to build strength and not a Friday morning number. And the thing about she's talking about there with the Friday morning number is that the fat loss coach that she was working with before, they only weighed in once per week on Fridays. And there was always this mindset around kind of trying to game the system leading up to that day, that one time a week weigh-in. Like, what can I do on Wednesday and Thursday to try to weigh less for my Friday check-in? And sometimes that can lead to some unhealthy patterns in mindset and therefore lead to some unhealthy patterns in behavior. And that's really something that we've been tackling, and I'm super proud of the progress that she's made so far.
Awesome, Holly.
Yeah.
Very awesome.
Do you want to read the next one?
I will.
All right.
This one comes from Kyla U, with the letter U. U. She's one of our OG clients,
Kyla,
from the beginning. And we share pictures of her often working out in her basement. And if you see a picture of this girl, you'll be like, Kyla lifts.
She's awesome.
She has she's got muscles galore. Anyway, she's a mom of... I want to say 3?
2 or 3.
2 or 3. Yeah. Okay. I am so pumped. And I also have to share with you a proud moment. And that's one that is also super motivating to stick with Digital Barbell. I play my old lady basketball on Sunday afternoons. Half of the girls played college ball. We all range in ages from 26 to 43, me being the second oldest. All of the girls commented on how I ran down the court and sprinted. I haven't played for 2 years. And I don't do sprints daily, and I don't run daily, but I do Digital Barbell. I love it.
Yeah.
So this is just so awesome to see, like, how doing like the workouts, doing some strength training, some muscle building, and some conditioning pays off for these things that we just want to go and enjoy life.
Yep.
Play basketball with some people, or, pick up our kids or play on the playground. I think she's also shared times of her, scaling the monkey bars, and her kids are like, wow, you're so awesome. So it's
And one last thing about Kyla, and I brought this up before, is like she is a true testament of the something is better than nothing mentality, because when she first started with us, she had a knee brace on. She had just had knee surgery. She was on crutches. She couldn't do anything with that leg. Really couldn't do a whole lot lower body, period. She still got up the gumption to join and work with us. And like we helped her scale all the things so she could still make progress. And slowly as she healed, started working more and more of that leg stuff in. Now she's just 2 years plus into just making this gains. And it's all because she started even when she was afraid things weren't going to be perfect.
And just a model of consistency too. And throughout what I've seen from her is just like, as her schedule has changed, she adjusts her workouts. She goes and works out in the morning before anybody in her house is awake. Sometimes she'll be like, I couldn't jump on the box because I'd wake the whole house up. She like makes time to get it done, to make this the first priority, because she knows just stuff like this, how much it reflects to your real life.
Yep. Good stuff.
So good.
Well, we have part 2 of our Mastering Your Metabolism series today. It's a doozy. Buckle up. Listen to this when you've got some time. Grab something to take notes with. So here we go. Okay, welcome to part 2 of our 2-part series on Mastering Your Metabolism. If you haven't heard part 1 yet, definitely go back and listen to episode number 84. If you're short on time today, let me give you a 60-second recap. All food has calories, but different foods have different amounts of calories depending on how much protein, carbs, and fat they have in them. Calories are really just a measurement of energy, and our body converts that energy into a currency that it knows how to use called ATP. All of the energy from calories that our body burns per day is called our total daily energy expenditure, or our TDEE. The biggest part of our calorie burn goes to what's called our BMR. This is the cost just to keep the lights on. Your BMR is mainly influenced by your height, your weight, your age, and the amount of muscle you have on your frame. Other parts of your TDEE are your non-exercise activity like blinking and fidgeting, your exercise activity, and the calories that are burned digesting your food, which is called the thermic effect of food. We also talked about why the plan to try and exercise off calories to manipulate your weight is a frustrating and mostly pointless pursuit. In today's episode, we're going to make this personal. We're going to talk about how to determine your TDEE, how and why your TDEE changes, and how to use all of this knowledge about metabolism and calories to change your own body at will. Let's start with how to determine your TDEE. Maybe you're wondering, how the heck am I supposed to know what my TDEE is? Great question. But before I tell you how to find yours, we need to establish that your TDEE isn't a set in stone number. It's not set in stone from day to day, and it's not set in stone from year to year. And oh yeah, everyone's is different too. And I'm sure that makes sense if you remember all of those individual variables that make up TDEE. Also, don't forget that us humans are very adaptable animals. Our bodies adapt to the stresses that we expose them to. They also adapt to the amount of energy that we put into them. This is another reason that your TDEE is a number that can change over time. Our bodies crave homeostasis. We use our adaptable ability to achieve energy homeostasis through our ever-evolving TDEE. We'll talk even more about that in a bit. Okay, so here's how to figure out your TDEE. Well, the fastest way is to use your fingers. Google Mifflin-St. Jeor Formula Calculator. This is a widely accepted formula to determine your BMR based on your sex, age, height, and weight. From there, we need to add in some calories to account for our activity level. Remember our NEAT and our exercise activity? We do that through what's called an activity multiplier. So grab your pen and paper. Take your BMR and multiply it by one of the following activity levels that best fits you. Are you pretty sedentary with no regular exercise and a desk job? Multiply your BMR times 1.2. Do you do light exercise 1 to 3 times per week? That's your BMR times 1.375. Do you do moderate exercise 3 to 5 times per week? Take your BMR and multiply times 1.55. Are you really active, like 6 to 7 times per week of exercise? Take your BMR times 1.725. Are you a professional athlete who exercises twice a day, every single day? You use a 1.9 activity multiplier. But here's a warning based on working one-on-one with a few hundred people. Most people way overestimate how active they are and how intensely they're actually exercising. When in doubt, be conservative in your estimation. You are not Michael Phelps. So that number you came up with after you used your activity multiplier is your estimated TDEE based on the calculator. Easy enough, right? For some people, this number is good enough. It certainly is a starting point. But there's drawbacks and limitations to this shortcut method. For starters, it doesn't know much about you. It doesn't know your previous experience with diets. It doesn't take into account how many calories you're eating now and a lot of other factors. It doesn't take into account your body fat percentage and your total food habits. All of these things have a big impact on your TDEE. So while calculators are a convenient shortcut, they don't always tell the whole truth. And we've learned from working with our clients over the years that these calculators can routinely be off by easily 10 to 25%. So to sum up the downside of using a BMR calculator and an activity multiplier, they can be a good ballpark estimate of your TDEE, but you may be better off using a different approach. The other method to find your TDEE that doesn't use a calculator does require more buy-in and patience on your part. The benefit of that extra effort is that it's based more on you, and therefore the results can be more trusted. Here's what you need to do, step by step. Number 1, get a cheap digital food scale. They're less than $15 online. Number 2, download MyFitnessPal or another free food logging app and set up an account. Be sure and check the description below this episode for an article that we wrote about how to log your food correctly. Step 3, weigh yourself and record your body weight in MyFitnessPal every day for the next 7 days. Step 4, without changing your diet, log everything you eat and drink in the app for the next week. The point is to see where your energy needs are currently, so if you're feeling guilty about your choices and you choose not to log a few handfuls of candy that you normally eat every afternoon, you're not going to get an accurate estimate of your TDEE. Step 5, maintain your normal physical activity and exercise during these 7 days. Don't do this when you're sick or when you decide you're going to start running 5 miles a day when you have not been doing that previously. Step 6, after your 7 days of logging your food, take your body weight again and record it. Add up the total number of calories that you ate and divide by the number of days that you logged. For example, if you logged for 7 days and ate a total of 12,000 calories, your average daily calorie intake was 1,714 calories. Assuming that your body weight stayed about the same, plus or minus a pound, and you did a good job logging your food, you now have an accurate estimate of your total daily energy expenditure. And since this is based on an average, the more days you log, the better your estimate will be. If you weigh yourself at the end of your food logging and you've gained a large amount of weight, like 2 to 5 pounds, I'd recommend trying this again. I mean, what else you got to do? You're going to be eating anyway, right? Okay, let's buckle up and make this even more personal. Now that we know our TDEE, let's talk about how that relates to how much we're eating. We already established that our TDEE changes over time. It's also important to understand that we're talking in terms of time longer than one single day. It's impossible to gain or lose a significant amount of fat in one day, regardless of your TDEE, unless you're eating hot dogs for cash in the annual Nathan's hot dog eating contest. We're talking about what happens when you eat different amounts of food on average over longer periods of time, like weeks, months, and years. Okay, let's move on and talk about 3 different scenarios. First, what happens when you eat at your TDEE? This is where calories in equals calories out, or maintenance. This one's easy. When you eat the same number of calories as your TDEE, your body weight remains unchanged, save for daily fluctuations in water weight. And there's little to no effect on your hormones in the big picture. Again, this is based on your average calorie intake, not one day. Eating at your TDEE, or your maintenance calories, can be a good break for your body if you've been chronically dieting. It's a way to restore hormonal balance, minimize metabolic adaptation, and give your mind a break too. We'll also get into that more later. So what happens when you eat more than your TDEE? In other words, calories in is more than calories out, or a caloric surplus. On the surface, this one's simple. When you eat more calories on average than your TDEE, you gain weight. But there's more to the story. I'm sure you already knew that overeating food causes fat gain, but did you ever wonder why that is? Remember how we talked about how fat is more calorically dense than carbohydrates or protein in episode 1? That makes fat, which are lipids, an extremely efficient storage medium. So throughout our evolution, food hasn't always been as readily accessible as it is now, and our biological processes reflect that. We have the ability to store extra energy that we eat so that we have a backup in times of low energy intake, aka a lack of incoming food. If we routinely eat more than we need, our body converts that surplus of energy into body fat. Here's how it happens. Step 1, eat food. Step 2, insulin is secreted by the pancreas. Step 3, insulin signals the cells in our muscles, liver, and fat cells, and a few others, to start building proteins from the amino acids, convert the sugars to glucose and glycogen, and convert dietary fat into triglycerides. If we're eating at our TDEE, it all comes out in the wash, and these processes don't result in fat storage for later use. When we're eating more than our TDEE, our body stores that extra energy in our fat cells. But there's some nuance that you should know about. Our bodies aren't great at storing excess protein and carbohydrates as fat. We can absolutely do it, but not nearly as well as we can store excess dietary fat as body fat. It can require up to 10 times more energy for our body to store carbohydrates and protein as fat than calories from excess dietary fat. So what does that mean on a practical level? Well, if you know you're going to be eating more than your TDEE, and you're not keen on storing the extra energy in your waistline and in your thighs, try to skew your extra food intake towards protein and carbs versus fat. Please notice that I did not say that calories made up of protein and carbs cannot be stored as fat. Rather, it's just a less efficient process. If you chronically overeat any of the 3 macronutrients, you will gain weight and fat. Are we clear on that? There are no free calories. But eating more than your TDEE isn't always a bad thing. In fact, eating more than your TDEE is a necessity if your goal is to build muscle. Your body needs the energy from excess calories to build new tissue. If you aren't eating more than your TDEE, you'll lack the surplus of energy that you need to build muscle. Since protein contains the amino acids that are the building blocks of muscle, it's important to eat enough protein when eating in a surplus to build muscle. As a general rule, we recommend getting between 0.8 and 1.2 grams of protein per day per pound of body weight for most people. As a side note here, we wrote a free calculator that you can download that will help you set your target protein, carbs, fat, and calories, whether your goal is fat loss or muscle gain. I'll put a link to it in the description of this episode also. Some exceptions to those protein recommendations would either be a rank novice trainee or somebody that has a significant amount of fat to lose. These folks are able to build muscle while eating at or slightly less than their TDEE. Definitely check out episode number 70 of the podcast about newbie gains to learn all you need to know about these special circumstances. The other critical element to building muscle in a calorie surplus is resistance training. If you're just overeating and not lifting weights, you're doing it wrong and you'll be pretty unimpressed with your results. Get your weights and get to lifting. So far, we've talked about 2 things that happen on the outside of your body when you eat more than your TDEE. How about what happens on the inside? Remember NEAT, that non-exercise activity that burns up a lot of the calories you use during the day? NEAT is the most adaptable element of our metabolism and therefore our TDEE. The biggest thing that makes your NEAT go up and down over the course of days, weeks, and months is the energy available to power all that activity. When energy is abundant, expect a sharp incline in NEAT. This usually shows up as feeling more energetic in general. Walking out to get the trash cans, no big deal. Sinking deep into the couch and going comatose doesn't even sound appealing. The effect on NEAT from a calorie surplus is definitely noticeable. Being in a calorie surplus also affects the 2 hormones that affect our hunger and satiety. They're called leptin and ghrelin. Leptin tells you you're not hungry, and ghrelin sends signals of hunger to your brain. These 2 hormones work in opposition to each other. We secrete more leptin when we overeat, which suppresses hunger in an effort to help us maintain our current weight. So as you eat more than your TDEE, your body tries to bring you back to homeostasis by telling you, hey, I'm full. As you might have experienced, it's possible to power through those signals and keep eating though. Happy Thanksgiving, everyone. Another thing that happens as we chronically eat more than our TDEE is that our bodies become less efficient at using energy. Think about it this way. If you had a magic wallet that seemed to never run out of cash, how efficient would you be with your spending? I'm guessing you wouldn't think twice about dropping $5 for a fancy-ass coffee or $25 for a hat that you may never even wear. When resources are abundant, we're less careful with them. We tend to waste more. Well, the same is true with the energy conversion in our bodies. If we get used to a bountiful energy supply, who cares if we waste a little in the process? What this means is our TDEE can gradually creep higher and higher when we're overeating over time. That leads me to the next point. As you eat more than your TDEE, you're going to gain weight. If you take the smart approach and you eat adequate protein and lift weights in the right way, you'll gain muscle in addition to fat. But either way, you are becoming a bigger person. Guess what a bigger person needs? More calories. When you figured out your TDEE, you were one weight. And as you've eaten and grown, you're a higher weight. That means that it takes more energy to move around those extra pounds, more energy to digest and absorb that extra food you're eating, and more energy to do your workouts with those larger, more powerful muscles. All of this means that whatever your TDEE was 6 months ago is not what it is today. If you've been eating in a calorie surplus, you're not the same person anymore. If you've gained a significant amount of weight during a period of being in a calorie surplus and want to see where your TDEE is now, you can follow the same steps we outlined earlier. Okay, let's move on and talk about what happens when you eat less than your TDEE. In other words, calories in is less than calories out, or what's called a caloric deficit. This situation is known as being on a diet in common culture. Eating less than your TDEE is the reason that any successful diet makes you lose weight. Yes, I said any diet. Even that magic fad diet that you saw on the Today Show or on the cover of a magazine at the grocery store checkout line. So let's talk about why that's true. When we eat at our TDEE, our body uses all the available energy from the food we're eating to provide everything we need. There's no body fat storage or utilization. When we eat less than our TDEE, our body can now tap into our reserve energy, our body fat. Our reserve energy is stored in fat cells called adipocytes. Since we're not eating all the time, fatty acids are going in and out of our fat cells and blood to provide us a constant stream of energy throughout the day. This is largely controlled by when the last time we've eaten is and the subsequent release of insulin. When we run our body short on energy in the longer term, not just between meals, is when we really tap into our fat reserves. Through a series of processes, fat in the form of fatty acids is shuttled from the adipocytes through the bloodstream and into our muscles to be burned for energy. This liberation of fatty acids from the adipocytes reduces their size. They shrink and give you the visual benefit of fat loss. But just like the internal processes that happen when you overeat calories, there are internal things that happen when you undereat calories. Let's go back to NEAT for a second. The opposite effects of NEAT can be seen in a prolonged calorie deficit than the ones we talked about earlier in the surplus. Remember, our bodies want homeostasis. They want to stay the same. If we're giving our bodies less energy than they need, they're going to try to make up the difference. A reduction of calories burned through NEAT is arguably the most notable change you'll experience when dieting. As with all things nutrition, there are individual differences from person to person. But as you decrease your caloric intake, and as the period of time in a deficit rolls on, you will most likely feel less energetic. You may move less. The idea of getting off the couch to get the remote sounds less appealing than sitting through a commercial. Some of these declines in NEAT will be very noticeable and some not so much. The deeper you go into a caloric deficit and the longer you keep it up, the more noticeable the changes will be. I've heard tales of professional bodybuilders that obtain dangerously low body fat percentages feeling like they are blinking slower than normal just before they get on stage for a show. Ouch. And in addition to a decline in NEAT, our body will also downregulate our BMR in an effort to conserve energy. Everything slows down. Remember, our body wants homeostasis, and it'll do its best to achieve it. Also important to remember, the same hormones that are at play in a caloric surplus are also at work in a caloric deficit. In an energy shortage, ghrelin secretion is ramped up, which increases our hunger. That makes your brain tell you need to eat something. Also during this time, leptin secretion from the fat cells is reduced. Remember, leptin tells you that you're full. So you've got one hormone telling your brain that you need to eat and another hormone telling your brain that you're not full. Double ouch. These hormones are one of the reasons that losing weight gets so tough. Other hormones like testosterone and estrogen can show changes in a calorie deficit, although they have less overall impact on the metabolism of energy. The stress hormone cortisol has been shown to increase in times of a prolonged caloric restriction. This typically manifests in higher irritability, fatigue, and overall decreased mood. Sad face emoji. Let's talk about what happens to our energy needs as we lose weight and fat through a calorie deficit. If our TDEE increases over time as we gain weight through a caloric surplus, you can probably guess what happens as we lose weight. That's right, we need less energy to maintain our current size. As a lighter person, you no longer require the same number of calories to power your body. Combine that with the decreased energy demands from a decline in your BMR and your NEAT, and over time, you just need less food as you diet. This probably makes sense to you, but there's an important connection that I want you to make in your brain regarding this fact. Over time, as you eat less than your TDEE, your TDEE gradually gets less and less. This is what causes you to stop losing weight on a diet, even though you're still eating the same number of calories that you were when you started. What used to be a calorie deficit for you is now your TDEE. This is what causes a true weight loss plateau, when your caloric deficit is no longer an actual deficit, but rather it's now your maintenance calories. Another important thing to point out is that weight loss does not necessarily mean fat loss. Yes, your body will tap into your fat reserves in a caloric deficit, but it can and will also tap into your stored energy in the form of muscle also. That's not good, as muscle is not easy to build, and it's our greatest fat-burning engine. Minimizing muscle loss during a caloric deficit is important, but it's not complicated. Consuming adequate dietary protein and doing resistance training 3 to 5 times per week is the not-so-secret recipe to preserving as much muscle as possible during a diet, and you should be doing both. Okay, we have covered a lot, but we're not done. We need to talk about metabolic adaptation and how to do all this without messing it up. Remember, this is what we help our clients do every single day. So if you want to put this on cruise control, please apply for coaching in the link in the description of this episode. Okay, let's summarize some of these topics and bring up a few more important things before we close out. Our bodies are very adaptable, and because of that, they're very individualized. They're universal elements of nutrition like energy balance, calories in versus calories out, the science behind fat storage and hormone secretion, and the roles of protein, carbohydrates, fat, fiber, all that in our body. These hold true for everyone, unless there's an underlying health condition or a disease. Then within that, there's individualization of all these elements that are more specific from person to person. So we rely on the scientific basics as we guide real people through their own application of these facts. The adaptable capabilities of our bodies provide us with amazing opportunity, but also places a responsibility on us to try to have as little impact as possible on our natural systems. Unfortunately, we live in a culture of quick fixes, shortcuts, fads, and just general misinformation that preys on people's lack of knowledge and their desire to get results with as little inconvenience as possible. This has contributed to the epidemic of yo-yo dieting, chronic disease, obesity, and unnecessary metabolic adaptation and damage that we see today. You see, we have the ability through going on and off of extreme diets to wreak a little bit of havoc on our hormones and our metabolism. Our bodies don't like extremes, and they're prepared to deal with them in extremes. When we go from eating at or above our TDE for a prolonged period straight into an extreme calorie deficit, we're effectively telling our body that we're starving. Energy is not readily available. It uses those adaptable features we talked about earlier to try and regulate our weight and energy use, declining our BMR, our NEAT, our TDEE, and using our hormones to try to get us to eat more are among some of the tools that it has available. Those hormones also send a signal to our fat cells. The cells become prepared to store fat quickly and efficiently should energy become available soon. Not only that, but in some case studies, they've shown that we can actually generate new fat cells to store even more energy for future use. What's the big deal, you ask? Well, think about this. If you rapidly change your diet, maybe you remove an entire macronutrient from your diet, or you decide you're only going to drink juice or something like that, which in turn helps you create a calorie deficit, which makes you lose weight, how long can you keep that up? Is that sustainable? If you have an event on the horizon that you want to look your best for, so you slash 800 calories per day out of your diet, putting yourself into a deep caloric deficit, what are you going to do after the event? In both cases, you lost weight, but you also set yourself up for rapid weight regain once your plan is no longer sustainable. How many times have you or somebody else you know lost 20 pounds and then gained 25 back, then lost 15 and gained 18 back? This is yo-yo dieting in an unsustainable way, and it's not good. The really bad part about that approach is that triggering your body to adapt to decreased energy over and over and over again increases its efficiency to prevent you from losing weight in the future. It just makes sense from an evolutionary standpoint. Yo-yo dieting is not healthy for your mind or your metabolism, and it's setting you up for long-term failure and frustration. The term metabolic damage gets thrown around a lot these days. I prefer to think of it not so much as damage, but metabolic adaptation that needs a little bit of love. It's possible to reverse the negative adaptations we can do to our bodies if we're patient and we use smart strategies. It's also possible to lose and gain weight in a way that lessens the amount of metabolic adaptation and triggering of your body's built-in self-defense mechanisms that prevent weight gain or loss. If you've dieted with an extremely low-calorie diet for a prolonged period of time, you might find yourself unable to keep losing weight, despite still having quite a bit of weight to lose. In these cases, cutting more calories just isn't practical. Your TDEE is already very low for your body weight, and you're likely feeling the other effects like lack of energy from metabolic adaptation. If this sounds like you need to wrap your mind around the idea of gradually eating more food over time, slowly, in order to reset your hormonal balance and bring your TDEE back up into normal ranges. If you do this slowly over the course of months, you can take advantage of your increases in BMR and NEAT and not gain as much weight as if you were just simply add in several hundred calories per day all at once. Once you've adapted to a more normal caloric intake and your biofeedback is looking good, then you can start to work your way back into a caloric deficit to lose more fat. This process is called a reverse diet. If you have any questions about it, please send me an email at jonathan@digitalbarbell.com. If you've been eating at or about your TDEE for a prolonged period of time, you're in a good spot to start a caloric deficit to lose fat. Remember, your overall goal should be to lose fat in a manner that minimizes the amount of adaptation that your body makes. We want to try not to give your body that, oh crap, we're starving moment. Our preferred method for this is twofold. First, we want to set a moderate but not overly aggressive caloric deficit. The actual number depends on where your TDEE is now and how much weight you really have to lose. We know that there's roughly 3,500 calories of energy in a pound of body fat. So we use that knowledge to subtract calories from your weekly TDEE and then average that out into a daily calorie goal. So if our goal is to lose 1 pound per week, we need to create a 500 calorie per day deficit on average, 3,500 divided by 7. In general, a caloric deficit that produces a conservative rate of fat loss, somewhere around 0.5 to 1% of your body weight per week, will be more sustainable and have less metabolic impact than a more aggressive approach. The second thing we consider when helping a client lose weight is the short-term and total period of time spent in a caloric deficit. Dieting is a stress on the body, which is why we routinely monitor our clients' stress, motivation, hunger, and recovery levels. These subjective measures can be indicators of both when we're close to reaching a weight loss plateau and when those adaptive processes of the body, like a reduction in NEAT, are starting to kick in. If the only metric you're tracking in your weight loss progress is the number on the scale, you're setting yourself up for failure. In order to prevent plateaus due to metabolic adaptation, we can give our bodies a period of extra energy that in effect tells it, okay, cool, everything's fine. No need to get alarmed and make big changes to NEAT and hormone levels. This can look a lot of different ways, but for most people, it's a period of about 2 to 3 days of eating at your maintenance calories. Funny enough, since we work with regular people with real social lives, families, holidays, vacations, and all that kind of stuff, these periods of eating at or above their TDEE kind of tend to happen naturally as part of regular life without us even instructing people to do them. However, if you've been extremely consistent in your caloric deficit and you notice your mood, energy, and recovery taking a nosedive, it might be time for a short break from that deficit. In the longer term, setting a realistic goal as far as how long you're giving yourself to lose weight is the best bet. If you're looking at a long-term weight loss, somewhere 6 to 24 months, plan to have periods of eating at your maintenance calories mixed in throughout the process. This can be different lengths of time depending on how big your deficit is, how many pounds you're trying to lose, and how your body responds to being short on energy. Just like shorter-term diet breaks, sometimes these happen as a part of life in the form of week-long vacations, extended slip-ups, or just not being as careful for a week or two. Don't get too hung up on the details of this. Monitor your biofeedback, or if you're working with a coach, keep them up to date on how you're feeling. If your goal is muscle gain and you're eating more than your TDEE to do so, you need to use the same process as we just discussed to set up your caloric surplus. We recommend a conservative approach to muscle gain. We call it lean gaining, in order to skew as much of your weight gain towards muscle versus fat. Aiming for around 0.5 to 1% of your body weight gained per week is kind of the sweet spot for most people. If you're severely underweight and you don't mind putting on a little bit of fluff, you can be more aggressive. So if your TDEE is 2,000 calories per day and your goal is to gain 1 pound per week, you need to be eating about 2,500 calories per day on average to make that happen. Remember what we said about protein intake in a surplus. It's important if your goal is to build muscle and not just gain fat. When you get to your goal weight, you'll need to reassess where your maintenance calories are now that you're heavier before deciding if you're going to maintain your existing weight or look at cutting body fat. I know that we covered a lot of ground in this episode. Honestly, we could have gone even deeper into the science, citing more of the recent research. And we have an open door policy. If you ever have a question or need clarification about anything, please feel free to email us or contact us through the website. If I had to summarize this whole thing up, I'd encourage you to take some time to learn about these topics if they interest you, or if you're interested in dieting or gaining muscle the right way. In the grand scheme of things, hiring a coach like us to help you do it the right way is a pretty wise investment in your health and in your knowledge. Don't get in a rush. Don't look for quick fixes or fads. They come at a cost, if they work at all. And it's hard to imagine a scenario where that's actually worth doing it. Thanks for listening to this episode. Have a great day. Thank you all for listening. We truly appreciate it. But real quick, before we go, do us a favor and subscribe to the podcast and leave us a review. Be sure and follow us on Instagram and Facebook at Digital Barbell for all of the latest and greatest free content. If you're interested in working with Blakely and I, we'd love to talk. Apply for coaching with the link in the description of this episode or by visiting digitalbarbell.com. We'd love to talk about helping you reach your goals with a training and nutrition program built just for you. Thanks again and have a great day.